a universal desire of people to have abundance and feel successful. And it was part of the popular culture that they were certainly aware of. And so I went ahead and used that title for the presentation. So when I first got there, and this is just a truncated version, first got there, here I am, a white American woman in an English prison, and these guys were of all races, and as I said, all ages as well, and all men. But I wanted to make a connection with them and let them feel not judged, let them feel accepted, let them feel excited about this creative opportunity that they were facing. So I had them start off combining some physical exercise, like throwing a koosh ball, along with some mental or thoughtful activities. So I had them like call out while as they were passing the koosh ball around. Each person would respond with a word that they thought of in relation to a couple of topics. And the first one was freedom. What are some of the words that you think of when you think of freedom? And, things came up like, I can make my own decisions, I can sleep in, I can play with the kids, all those positive ones. But eventually it started including words, well, I'm scared, don't know what I'm going to do with my time, don't know who's going to accept me, don't know what job I'm going to have, and so on. So there was this combination and a smattering of both sort of positive responses as well as what you might call negative, but just the ones, on the full spectrum of emotions. So I said, okay, so that's interesting. Good to hear. Those are good things to know, and we'll address them. Then I talked about success, and they tossed the koosh ball around, saying, what does success mean to you? What words come up or what images come up? And it's a house, and it's a hot rod car, and it's a pretty wife, and it's kids that love me, and it's having a job where I can support myself. But then crept in those things of, well, I don't deserve success, or I don't know how to be successful, or, not in my lifetime, or there's no family history of it, and so on and so forth. So once again, we brought up the full spectrum of emotions and thoughts they had around the concept, in this case, of success. And so we did this all without judgment, just had them share it while they were doing physical activity, and it loosened them up and opened them up to being vulnerable, to being empathetic to each other, to one another, and really basically laying the cards on the table. If you can go back to the elephant analogy, we'll say we talked about the elephant in the room. They were kind of scared about what was coming up. So the next part of the process I took them through was, and by the way, we were prohibited from having scissors in the room. So as we did the next exercise, which is a mini collage, it was about themselves. I had them flip through magazines of all different types and topics, from auto mechanics and, to fashion magazines, to beauty magazines, to, you name it. We had all kinds of magazines there. And they looked through them, and I had them pick out at least 3 either pictures or words that would capture the essence of what they considered their best self. So, wow, you think about this. These are guys that very often don't have a really high or solid or strong self-image or positive one. And I'm asking them to pick out pictures and words that capture their best self. So it wasn't as straightforward as it seemed, and we had enough time to do that. And then I had them glue them down on about 11 by 17 inch sheet of paper right in the middle. This is who you are according to your idea of your best self. And some of them, of course, had higher expectations than themselves than others. And also, they shared with each other. I invited them to share with each other if they found pieces that would fit with somebody else. And so we then went ahead and just to truncate this a little bit more, had them go through what was their ideal vision in 5 years. What did they want their life to look like? And of course, they included things like a job, a house, a car, a beautiful spouse, kids that loved them, and so on. And we worked backwards from the situation now. Okay, what is your situation now as you are just about ready to get out? Do you have the house? Do you have the car? Do you have the pretty wife? And if they did, how can you make it better? If they didn't, we actually reverse engineered what steps they would have to go through. If they wanted to have a certain kind of job, let's say opening an auto repair shop, what skills would you need to have? What business acumen, what capital would you need to have in order to do that, to be successful at it in a 5-year period? So we reverse engineered everything. And then finished off with them creating a collage of their ideal life. And so they ended up with 2 sheets of paper that they could take away with them to look at, to consider, to continue to add to. One of them was the roadmap with specific steps they could take to fulfill some of these things they wanted to have in their life in a fulfilling way within 5 years. And the other one was a collage that inspired them about who they wanted to be as their best self and what their life, colorful life, might look like in, let's say, 5 years. It was an arbitrary period. And I tell you, what had happened meanwhile is they were so cooperative, they were so engaged, they were so vulnerable and willing to share in that group that by the time we were even halfway through the morning, I had probably 20 staff members plastered up against the window outside the library looking in, watching what was happening. They were just totally, to use the British word, gobsmacked, shocked at what was going on inside that group. Now, a lot of times people, when they get out of prison, they're called parolees or formerly incarcerated persons, FIPs. They're not treated very well. And part of what they have to face is being treated rudely, being made to wait, not having proper documents, being sent around in circles in order to survive the system. And they're not trained for that, either in a process sense or in a sense of having enough self-belief and a self-identity to be able to handle it. So what I wanted to build into my experience with them so that they could override their conditioning, just like the elephants, was that they would have, how we can prevent this in the future is we need better early conditions and conditioning, particularly around those criminal risk factors. We need to start with better role models. Otherwise, there ends up being a vacuum of identity. Like when a parent is missing, a parental figure is missing, they end up with an identity vacuum, leading very often to things like drug use or addictions of various sorts that lead them into criminal activity like theft in order to feed that habit. So we have to nip that cycle in the bud. It's important to develop early and better coping strategies to deal with the difficulties of life, and then even when they're in prison, coping strategies for in prison and when they get out of prison. Wow, the power of treating each other or other people with kindness. It's considered very often to be a weakness, but frankly, it takes a lot of strength to be kind when other people aren't in particular. We need to help people design how-to plans, simple steps to survive, things like getting a job or how to be a good person in a relationship. You want to have a good relationship? How are you yourself going to be in that relationship so that somebody else would want to have you as a partner? Let's start with you. How can you earn it, receive it, and enjoy it and not feel you have to take it from somebody, whether it's a person or a thing? And also, I think the importance of teaching mindfulness and meditation, which not in the traditional sense you might think of, but from what I know about memory, the ability to pay attention in the now, in the present, means that whoever does this will have more memories because they're paying attention in the now. It locks in what happens now that become our memories, which are remembrances of things past, which in turn builds a bigger pool of things to draw from to create a much more creative future. So this is my stab at my prison job, trying to make a difference in the lives of these people coming out of prison. I understood the results were extraordinary. I didn't, because they closed and I moved away from England. I don't have any long-term statistics on this, but I do understand that in the short term, not only the inmates, but the staff were impressed and changed how they then behave towards each other. So that's a wrap for me today. I want to thank you so much for being here on Living Legacy Leadership. And look us up on the SOBradionetwork.com under my show. And look also under GameChangerThinking.com. And remember, the life you live is the legacy you leave. Bye-bye now.